friend. I've known this guy for, has it been 4 years? Is it that long?
It
Really?
feels that long.
Thanks.
Since they were four.
We only met yesterday. I've known him since high school. I'm so stoked. He's got a wonderful book out. He's got the vendor right up here inside. You can check it out. E.S.Brown.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. So first off, thank you, Matt, and everyone else here with the Second Star Festival for putting on this awesome event and for inviting me to come talk today. I don't normally talk in front of people too often, so they asked me to come by and talk about my journey to becoming a published novelist. So thank you, folks, for taking a few minutes out of your day and listening to what I have to say. So, who am I? So, my name is Edward S. Brown, hence the E.S. Brown. I live in Puyallup, Washington, and like Matt mentioned, I've known him since high school. And my journey to becoming a published author began back in 1977. I was 7 years old, and I'm not sure how that math works out, because I'm only 29 now. But I'll take that. And my parents took me to see a little movie that was out at the time called Star Wars. Maybe you've heard of it. And that movie was just mind-blowing. Like probably most people at that time, I was just in complete awe of what I was witnessing on that screen. The type of story that they were telling was just like unlike anything else I'd ever seen or experienced before. And right then and there, I decided I wanted to become a writer. I wanted to create stories like what I had just witnessed on that big screen. And in fact, that very night, after the movie was over, I went home and I told my parents, I'm going to become a writer. So I sat down, pen and paper, and that, again, this very same night, I wrote my first story. Now, granted, it wasn't very original. It was basically a good parts version of Star Wars. And not really knowing the ins and outs of how to express myself as an author, my story was complete with some amazing sound effects like pew, pew, pew for laser beams and whoosh for the spaceships, all written down on the page. But the reader, I'm sure, got a very good idea of what I was trying to convey. Continued writing through elementary, junior high, high school. Created some, what I felt were some amazing stories, none of which were published. Probably was a good thing. And then after high school, I kind of gave it up. And in the year 2000 was when I finally got back into it. I was living in Boston, and I would spend many, many very late nights, again with pen and paper, writing down just thoughts and ideas that started coming to me out of who knows where. To create some sort of story that was just in the back of my mind. And through the following literally 10 years, I continued to take notes and write down concepts and ideas of characters and situations, spaceships and other worlds and whatnot. And at the end of those 10 years, I finally had some sort of manuscript to bring it together, and I had about 90% of it completed. In the year 2011, I got turned on to a writing coach program by New York Times bestselling author Steve Alton. And if you haven't heard of Steve Alton, probably will in the next year or two, because his biggest claim to fame, which was a series of books called May, about a prehistoric megalodon shark terrorizing people in the modern world, basically, is going to be a big budget Hollywood film that's due out next year or in 2017. So we're really excited about that. So keep your radar going on for that, because that's going to be really cool. But yeah, so we had this writing coach program where up-and-coming wannabe authors and writers would send him a submission, and if he felt that you could possibly make it as a writer, he would bring you on and offer his services. So somehow I made that cut, and he was just amazing. My time working with him is so invaluable. He all at once was my mentor, my teacher, my editor, and if you can imagine the most difficult college class professor who just tore you apart, but for the better of you. That's how he was. And we completely dissected the book. Broke it down, reworked it. He taught me the importance of doing research. My story is actually set in a completely fictional setting, far-off galaxy, everything's completely made up. But what he taught me was doing real-world research about situations and places and things that I could apply some of those concepts and ideas to this completely fictional setting, so that way the reader would have a way to relate to it on some level. So it wasn't just completely, totally out there. Through my research, I got really focused on the events of 9/11 and a lot of the conspiracy theories that went along with that. This talk isn't going to be about what's true and what isn't true about 9/11 or where our beliefs lie, but those conspiracy theories were still very, very intriguing and exciting to me. And so what I did was, in the revamped version of what would become Starphoenix, the debut novel, I took a lot of those concepts and ideas and applied them towards this fictional setting. Basically, you've got one planet's government is in charge of all the galaxy's energy reserves. Another government wants it. So this government allows for terrorists to basically destroy 3 of their major cities. And they use that as their case to go to war with the folks who are in control of the energy, so that they can forcibly take it, and hopefully everyone would think that the galaxy is a better place for it, and not blame them for really kind of being bad guys themselves. So in a nutshell, that's what the novel became. I threw in some sci-fi fantasy elements. You got swords on fire, you got swords that are made of ice and they clash, and there's mysticism and all sorts of other stuff you got to throw in. And that was a lot of carryovers from the original version of the manuscript. So went through that whole process, and in writing science fiction, I thought it was going to be easy in the sense that if it's completely made up, who's to say what I'm writing is wrong? But I quickly discovered that writing science fiction was extremely difficult because I couldn't simply say so-and-so walks into a store or so-and-so is in such a city, for example, if it was Earth-based. If I just mention New York City, you instantly get an image in your mind of what New York City is or what it is to this character. If I'm saying Micah City on the planet Theta, that means nothing to you. So as an author, I had to find creative ways to make it interesting for the reader to see what I'm talking about in this fictional world. So a lot of work went into that as well. So Steve Alton and I spent a couple of years actually finalizing this manuscript, and then it became a matter of what do we do to get it published? And I weighed my options between traditional big house publishing versus independent publishing. Did a lot of research, and unless you're one of the very, very, very few lucky ones with a big house publisher, you're not getting in advance. Or if you do, you have to pay it back immediately out of royalties. The royalties are smaller with a big house publisher, and you don't really have much control over the final product. With an independent publisher, I had a lot of control and say in the overall formatting of the book, the cover art. I was instrumental in designing just every facet of it. The map centering side I was involved with, and it was a very collaborative effort between the publisher and myself, and they really let me take charge, which was really nice, and I think we came up with a very nice product in the end there. But the road to publishing itself wasn't easy. I had researched several independent companies, got to know a lot of folks through Facebook, which was probably it definitely was very instrumental in getting published. And the initial publisher that I wanted to go with, I sought them out, bugged the crud out of them, and submitted, and they accepted the work. was great until about 30 days before publishing, when, for whatever reason, they shuttered their doors. So they were no more, and the rights reverted back to me, so I had to start that process all over again. I found another publishing company that I was very happy with. They accepted me, they extended me the contract offer, and over the next several weeks after that, I was sending them emails, messages through Facebook and whatnot, with just different questions I had for them, and they never got back to me. And things would just linger on, and I would send follow-up messages and follow-up emails, and they just were not getting back. And so finally, I threw my hands up on that and sent them a final email saying basically thanks but no thanks. Because if I were to sign with them, who knows what would have happened. I felt like probably nothing, because that's what was happening prior to me officially signing. Finally ended up with a company called Line by Lion, a little independent company out of Indiana, and they have been great. They've done everything that, frankly, a big house publisher would do for someone like me at this level. They got me onto Amazon.com. They got me into Barnes & Noble. They helped me get the product together. And beyond that, a lot of it's up to me. And so I do the bulk of my promotion work through Facebook, social media, and whatnot, going to conventions and events such as this, being able to talk to people, not usually up on the stage, but at least one-on-one, which is very cool. And just continue to keep plugging away that way to get it out there and hopefully someday become successful. At this point, I've got a couple projects in the works. Of course, there's a sequel to Starphoenix, so because everything has to be at least a trilogy. And so when the inevitable movie comes along, they can divide those into like 19 movies. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also working on, it was up there a day ago, a book called VAMPOCALYPSE, which is a post-apocalyptic vampire tale. We've got vampires who have actually infiltrated the White House and the upper echelons of the government, and they basically get a lot of the governments to go to war with each other. Nuclear war, which casts the world into a nuclear winter, blocking out the sun's rays, which really just allows the vampires to thrive. And so that's how that came to be. So that will hopefully be out later this year, or the first part of next year. Oh, that's the sequel to Starphoenix Legacy is the working title on that. And yeah, so that's basically it, I think. There's something else I needed to say before we turn it over here. But I don't know. I want to thank you all for, again, taking your time. My booth's right out there, so I would love to have you come by, talk to you, get to meet you one-on-one, answer any questions you may have. And yeah, so I guess that's it. Thank you. Oh, and my friend Stefan is plugging my book as well. So if you're familiar with SNL, this book has everything. Sci-fi, fantasy, cool heroes, amazing heroes, action, adventure, war, terrorism, government corruption, conspiracy theories, some spirituality, and even a little romance.